Hello, my name is Victoria Young, and I will be doing a lesson plan on literacy elements for first grade. And the teacher objective is the teacher will retell a story's beginning, middle, and end. And for my review, it would be the teacher will review sequence puzzle cards. And for that, I would just go over, they're little puzzle cards, and all it is the class will look at the pictures and line them up. So like this one, it's a picture of a little boy, and he has a flower in his hand, and the little girl's crying because she wants it. So they would have to decide between the next two pictures which would go next. Would it be the little boy giving her the flower, or would it be her smiling with the flower in her hand? And so they would decide the little boy giving her the flower, and they would put it together, and then put the next one together. So with this, when I reviewed, I would just show them all three of the pictures and ask them which comes first. They would tell me the little girl crying because she doesn't have the flower. And then I would ask them what comes next. And they would show me this one, the little boy handing the flower to her. And then last, I would ask them what comes last. And they would tell me this one because she has a flower in her hand and she's smiling. And we would just keep going over those. I have several of those that we could go over together. And then for my overview, the purpose and importance to develop a child's understanding of retelling the beginning, middle, and end of the story. For continuity, yesterday we learned about sequencing. Today we are learning how to retell a story's beginning, middle, and end. And then for tomorrow we will create our own stories, and the class will pick out the beginning, middle, and end. For the objective, the learner will retell a story's beginning, middle, and end. And so for my motivation, I'm going to read Toot by Kirsten Hall. And this is my son's favorite book, so that's why I picked it. It's a really, really cute book. Come on, trains, it's rise and shine. Time to get ready and fall in line. Toot comes racing down the track, chuggity, chuggity, clickety, clack. So I would stop there and I would ask them, what happens first? And they would tell me the trains all fall in line. As the engines line up straight, they push past Toot, who has to wait. The trains are in a single file. Toot's at the end, but gives a smile. This would be a great point to stop, and I could ask them how each of the trains look. Because this train is mad. He's a grumpy train. She's happy, and then Toot is still happy, even though he's at the end of the line. A big gray engine races by. Toot gives a puff and calls out, "You're in my way," the engine huffs. "I'm always first. I'm big and tough." So they would probably most definitely stop me and tell me that he's very mean. And Toot's still sweet and still smiling even though he's being mean to him. A speedy freight train whizzes by. Toot can't keep up. He's not that fast. He calls out, "My name is Toot." The train just laughs. "Well, aren't you cute?" Toot does his best to follow along, but the engines are too big and strong. Being the smallest in the yard means tiny Toot works twice as hard. Then suddenly Toot hears a clang, crash and boom, hiss and bang. Toot watches as the light turns red. There is trouble up ahead. This would be a good place to stop with them so they know that red means stop and green means go. I always tell my son that. Toot arrives on the scene. He inches by the big machines. The track is blocked, the tunnels collapse. None of the other engines can get past. The engines cry, "What will we do? We're all too big. We can't get through." Toot may be small, but he has a plan. He'll help his friends. He knows he can. Toot shuts his eyes. He hopes he'll fit. It might be tough, but he won't quit. The tunnel's tight. Toot squeezes through. He makes it out and calls, "Choo-choo." The other trains call back, "Choo-choo. You did it, Toot. We're proud of you." Toot beams as he chugs down the track. He'll get some help and hurry back. So we'd stop there and ask him, "So what just happened?" And they could tell me the tunnel collapsed and Toot fit through and he's going to get help. The engines cheer, "Hooray, hooray! Thank you, Toot. You saved the day." We are strong and fast and tall, but we are lucky you're so small. The tunnel's fixed, the track is clear, the engines line up, they're all here. And who's that first on the track? It's Toot. Chuggity, chuggity, clickety, clack. So then for the next thing, well first, the learner will retell the stories beginning, middle, and end with at least 90% accuracy, and that would be understanding. So I would model for them how to sequence a story and how that would work. We have little story strips. And so for the very first story strip, let me turn it around so you can see it. Oh, I guess I can't. Okay, so the very first one, we would have just the name, the title of the book, so it'd be Toot. And then we'd go through, and I'd let them help me pick it out. We'd have all these little strips right here, and I'd tell them to help me pick, out which strip goes first. So, like this one. The trains rise and shine and get ready to fall in line, so they would know that that one's first. And we would just keep going through them. So after that would be Toot's at the end, but he gives a smile. And then he hears a crash and boom, hiss and bang. He squeezes through the tunnel and calls out choo choo. And then the engines cheer, hooray, hooray. The track is clear. And then the last one would be Toot is first in line. So then I would show them how that worked. I would do one strip and I would ask them, I would just keep asking them what comes next. And then if they had trouble, like say one of the students said the wrong answer, I would go back to that part of the story and reread it for them. And then ask them again, so do you think that's what comes next? And they would tell me no and tell me, which strip to put in next. And then once all of the strips are placed together, we would read them out loud together. And I would ask them, do all of these strips sound like they're in the right place? And then for the next activity, the teacher will model how to complete the story sequence organizer. So what I would do with this, I would just explain to the class that I would be rereading Toot, and as I read it, I'd want them to write down in their organizer the beginning, middle, and the end. So I would probably stop and just make sure that they had time to write it down. And I would ask them, after each section, I would stop and say, have you figured out what the beginning is yet? And then they would tell me. And I would ask for specific examples, ask the students to give me an example of it, and just keep going like that. I would read the first page, and I would ask them, what happens first? And they would tell me the trains rise and shine, keep going, ask them, I would model for them to show how to write it down. And then I would just go to the story and keep stopping at different sections to make sure that they understand the importance of beginning, middle, and end. And after we're finished, I would ask them to give me responses, the responses on the worksheets, because everyone might not have the same response. And then for my closure, it would be the learner will create a flip book based on what they have written on their sequence organizer. So they're going to use what they wrote down during this time, during the whole class time, and make a flip book. And they would do this with at least 85% accuracy to the story. And that would be create. So for this one, I've already done one. And all they would do, I would have them cut it out, cut the strips out, and they would write down a sentence and then draw a picture to it. So for this one, I put the trains line up and Toot is last. And I showed that he's last in line. And then for the middle, the track is blocked, and I have a picture of the track being blocked. And then for the end, Toot is first in line. So I show a picture of him being in the front. And for that, I would just go around the class and ask the students questions about their drawing and their sentences. So I'll let them show me their drawing, and then I'll ask them to read their sentence to me. For my questions on the closure, I would ask what happens at the beginning of the story, and I would have a student tell me, the trains line up and Toot is last. And then I would ask what happens in the middle of the story, and they would tell me the tunnel collapsed and Toot went to get help. The end of the story, the track becomes clear, Toot got help, and then he ends up being first in line. For homework, the learner will complete a comic strip creation worksheet by drawing pictures of what happened in the story and writing one sentence above each of the pictures. So I went ahead and did that too, and it's just basically the same thing. They're just able to draw more pictures and have more sentences, so it's a little bit harder than just the 3, beginning, middle, and end. They have to really know the story to be able to do this. And then for my early finishers, the learner will use the sequence story sentence strips, and then they would have a train tracks, a tunnel, and rocks to recreate the story. So for that, I would just give them the strips, and here's their strips, and they would just recreate it. So they have this is the end of the story, obviously, because Toot is first, and I would explain to them that it doesn't matter that the trains look different, because I know I would have a student ask me, well, that doesn't look like Toot. But when you use props, you always can't find, the exact toy or picture that looks like it. So I have to explain that to them. So they would just model it. So here's the end. The rocks are all clear, and they would just do each little step and show me the step as they go. And then for my special needs students, the students with reading disabilities would work with a paraprofessional on sequencing by using pictures and words. So it wouldn't just be the sequence strips, I would give them pictures too. So let me show you that. So they would have pictures, and they'd have to use the picture to match whatever the sentence strip is. So for this one, Toot is last in line. So they would line it up with this sentence strip, and we could get them to read it or have the paraprofessional read it. And the same thing for the English language learner. They would work one-on-one with the teacher on sequencing with picture cards and words. So use the sentence strips and use a picture to match them together. For remediation, the teacher will reread to the small group, and as the teacher reads the story, the group will complete the story train worksheet. So for that, they would have a little worksheet with a train, and it's the same thing. It has beginning, middle, and end, and I would read the story with them, and we would go over each section together. And I would stop and, ask them, so what happened in the beginning? And they would tell me. And if we had to review certain answers, we could reread the story as many times as we needed to, so they could figure out that this was the beginning, this was the middle, and this was the end. And for my enrichment, the learner will match the beginning, middle, and end picture with a correct page and write a sentence explaining what is happening in the picture. So for that one, they have a little worksheet, and it has a B on it for beginning on this train. So they would have to find which picture is the beginning, which is this one, and they would put it on their page, and they would write a sentence that Toot is last in line. The train's line up, and Toot is last in line. And then they would do the same thing with middle. They would have a picture, which this one is showing the train collapsing. So they put the train collapses. I mean the tunnel collapses, I'm sorry. And then on this one, they could put something like, Toot saves the day, and he ends up being first in line. They would do the same thing on that one. And that's it. Thank you.